The dusty wind rolled across the quiet town of Red Hollow, pushing small clouds of dirt along the wooden sidewalks as the afternoon sun burned over the endless fields beyond the hills. Most people in that town believed they already knew every story worth telling. But that day, a new story arrived on the afternoon train, a story that would change the life of a quiet cowboy named Daniel Hayes forever. Daniel wasn't the kind of man people expected to order a bride. He was tall, quiet, and carried the calm strength of a man who had survived many hard winters on his ranch alone. His neighbors called him stubborn, but the truth was simpler: he had simply never found someone who truly needed him. Until now, months earlier, after the loneliness of the prairie began pressing heavier on his chest each night, Daniel finally answered a mail-order marriage advertisement. The letters he received from a woman named Clara were simple but sincere. She wrote about wanting safety, honesty, and a place where she could start again. That was enough for Daniel. But when the train whistle finally echoed across Red Hollow and Daniel waited beside the station platform, nothing could prepare him for what he was about to see. The passengers slowly stepped down from the train, travelers carrying bags, merchants shouting greetings, families reuniting with laughter. Then he saw her. A small woman stepped down carefully, holding a worn leather suitcase close to her chest as if it was the only thing protecting her from the world. Her dress was simple and dusty from travel, but what made Daniel's heart tighten was the faint purple bruise across her cheekbone. Clara's eyes were nervous, constantly scanning the crowd like a frightened deer. She looked nothing like the hopeful woman who had written those letters. When her eyes finally met Daniel's, she froze. Daniel tipped his hat gently and walked toward her slowly, making sure his voice stayed calm and steady. "Clara?" he asked quietly. She nodded, though her hands trembled slightly. For a moment neither of them spoke. The town noises faded behind them as Daniel noticed the bruises more clearly now, one along her cheek, another faint mark near her wrist where someone had grabbed her too tightly. Something cold moved through his chest. Without asking questions, without demanding explanations, Daniel simply reached down, picked up her suitcase, and looked her gently in the eyes. His voice was low but firm when he spoke the words that Clara had not heard in a very long time. "You're safe now." Those 3 words nearly broke her. Clara's shoulders shook as tears quickly filled her eyes, but she forced herself to stay standing. She had learned long ago that weakness invited danger. Daniel noticed the fear behind her strength. He didn't rush her, didn't touch her suddenly, didn't ask about the bruises. Instead he simply walked beside her toward the wagon waiting outside the station. As they rode toward his ranch, the prairie stretched wide around them, golden fields dancing in the wind while the sun slowly lowered toward the horizon. Clara remained quiet for most of the journey, her eyes watching the road behind them as if expecting someone to appear. Daniel noticed every small movement. The way she flinched at sudden sounds. The way she kept her hands folded tightly together. The way her breathing changed whenever they passed strangers. Something terrible had followed her to that train. But Daniel was not the kind of man who demanded answers before someone was ready to give them. When they finally reached the ranch, Clara stared at the small wooden house surrounded by open land and grazing horses. It wasn't grand, but it was peaceful. For the first time since leaving the train, her shoulders relaxed slightly. Daniel helped her down from the wagon and placed the suitcase by the porch steps. "You can rest here as long as you need," he said gently. "No one will bother you." Clara looked at him carefully, searching his face for the kind of cruelty she had grown used to seeing in men. But she found none, only quiet patience. That night, as the prairie sky filled with stars, Clara stood by the window of the small guest room Daniel had prepared. For the first time in years, the world outside was silent. No shouting, no footsteps chasing her, no locked doors, just wind moving through the grass. But Clara carried a secret heavier than the suitcase she brought. A secret that could bring dangerous men to Daniel's ranch, men who would not accept losing what they believed belonged to them. And far away on a dark road leading toward Red Hollow, 3 riders were already following the same train route Clara had taken. They were not looking for a lost bride. They were hunting for something she had stolen. Something powerful enough to kill for. Clara closed her eyes, knowing that Daniel's simple promise might soon be tested. Because the truth she carried could destroy the peaceful life he had offered her. And the worst part was, she didn't know if telling him would save him, or place him directly in danger. But if you want to discover what secret Clara is hiding, and what happens when those dangerous riders finally arrive at the ranch, make sure you stay with this story. And if you enjoy powerful cowboy stories like this, Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because the next chapter will reveal a truth that changes everything. The first morning on Daniel Hayes' ranch arrived quietly, with golden sunlight stretching across the prairie and the soft sounds of horses moving near the barn. Clara woke slowly, unsure for a moment where she was. For years she had learned to wake quickly, ready to run if someone opened the door too hard or spoke her name with anger. But this morning felt different. No shouting, no fear waiting outside the room. Just peaceful silence. She stepped carefully onto the porch and saw Daniel already working near the fence line, repairing a loose board while one of the horses watched him patiently. He noticed her standing there but didn't approach immediately. Instead he simply gave a small nod and said, "Morning." That small respect, giving her space, meant more than he realized. Clara sat on the porch steps, feeling the sun warm her face while the quiet ranch slowly eased the tension she had carried for years. For a few hours, life felt almost normal. Daniel showed her the garden, the well, and the small barn where he kept supplies. He spoke gently, never asking questions she clearly wasn't ready to answer. But peaceful moments rarely last forever when danger is already riding your trail. By late afternoon, Daniel noticed something strange. His old ranch dog began barking toward the distant hills, a warning bark that usually meant strangers were approaching. Daniel shaded his eyes and looked across the horizon. 3 riders were moving slowly along the ridge road. They weren't travelers. Travelers didn't ride that carefully while scanning every ranch they passed. These men were searching for something. Clara saw them too. The moment her eyes found those figures, the color drained from her face. Her hands began trembling again. Daniel didn't need to ask. He already knew. Those men were the reason she carried bruises when she arrived. He turned calmly toward her. "You want to tell me what they want?" he asked quietly. Clara swallowed hard, fighting the fear clawing its way up her throat. "They think I stole something," she whispered. Daniel leaned against the fence, waiting. Finally the truth spilled out. Clara had once worked as a housemaid for a powerful businessman in the eastern city. A cruel man who controlled everything in his home, including the people who worked for him. One night she accidentally discovered documents hidden inside his private office, documents proving he had been stealing land from struggling families by forging legal papers and threatening them with violence. Clara knew those papers could destroy him. When she realized he planned to burn them to hide the truth, she took them instead and ran. The bruise on her face was the result of being caught before she escaped. But she managed to flee with the evidence hidden inside the lining of her suitcase. The men riding toward the ranch were his hired trackers. Daniel listened quietly as the story ended. Then he looked again toward the riders, who were now much closer. Most men might have told Clara to leave, to run before trouble reached their home. But Daniel Hayes was not most men. He walked toward the barn calmly and reached for his rifle hanging near the door. Clara's voice shook as she spoke. "If they find me here, they'll hurt you too." Daniel checked the rifle chamber and stepped back onto the porch beside her. His voice remained steady and calm. "I told you something yesterday," he said. Clara looked at him, fear still shining in her eyes. Daniel met her gaze firmly. "You're safe now." The riders reached the gate just minutes later. Their leader leaned forward in his saddle, studying the ranch carefully before speaking. "We're looking for a woman," he called out. Daniel stood calmly on the porch steps, rifle resting casually against his shoulder. "Plenty of land out there," Daniel replied. "You're welcome to keep looking." The man's eyes narrowed. He clearly wasn't used to being challenged. But something about Daniel's calm confidence made the riders hesitate. Ranchers in this region protected their land fiercely. A fight here could turn ugly very quickly. After a long moment, the leader spat into the dust and turned his horse away. "We'll find her," he muttered. "And when we do, she'll wish she never ran." The riders disappeared slowly down the road, but both Daniel and Clara knew this wasn't the end. They would return, but something had changed inside Clara. For the first time, someone had chosen to stand beside her instead of turning away from the danger she carried. She looked at Daniel with quiet determination. "Those papers can stop him," she said softly. Daniel nodded. "Then we make sure the right people see them." The prairie wind moved gently through the grass as the sun began to set again over the ranch. The battle ahead wouldn't be easy. But Clara was no longer running alone. And sometimes, the strongest protection in the Wild West wasn't a gun or a fence. It was simply someone brave enough to say the words that Daniel had spoken the moment he met her. "You're safe now." And if you enjoyed this powerful cowboy story and want more emotional stories like this, Make sure you subscribe to the channel and join our growing storytelling family. Because the next story might just be even more powerful than this one.